Hello everyone and welcome back to Dissecting Dimensions, a series of videos made by yours truly breaking down every single franchise represented inside LEGO Dimensions. Today we are going to be taking a look at the first of several Wave 1 franchises that had an exclusive level pack associated with it. We are finally finished with the 3 main story mode franchises and we're diving into completely original content. Well, original in quotes. Level packs, for those unaware, were specifically made character packs that contained one character, one vehicle, and one gadget that could be used to solve various puzzles within the game, on top of having a custom-made level dedicated specifically to the franchise in question, starring that particular character. Now, as per usual, I will be going over everything else that I typically do in these Dissecting Dimensions videos, but I will be making a special section dedicated specifically to the level in question and mentioning anything noteworthy regarding it in between the story mode level and the adventure world. That's right, as with all 6 of the Year 1 level packs, the franchises in question got both a story mode level and an exclusive level in the game, which should go without saying that they are mandatory for 100% completion. The Back to the Future trilogy originally started as a singular film directed by Robert Zemeckis and produced by Steven Spielberg, released in 1985 to a pretty wide success. The film stars both Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd as the 2 main characters of the series, Marty McFly and Doc Brown respectively. The first film follows Marty McFly as he assists Doc Brown with a time-traveling DeLorean that he had recently invented, although due to a little mishap with some foreign terrorists, Marty has to use the DeLorean to escape from death and ends up rocketing all the way back to 1955. It is there where he realizes he is trapped in that time period and needs to figure out an efficient way back as quickly as possible. Throughout the duration of his time in 1955, not only does he meet up with Doc Brown from the past, but he also ends up encountering his parents when they were in high school. It's a pretty interesting premise for a film, especially back then with it being a Hollywood blockbuster and all. As one could probably infer, the film was successful, and it led to 2 sequels being made following the events of the first film. Part 2 features Marty first going into the future of 2015, and then traveling back in time to 1955 once again to prevent Biff Tannen, the main antagonist, from messing with the time stream and causing a future that ends up making him super rich and famous. After his encounter with Biff Tannen and resolving the main conflict of the second film, Doc Brown ends up getting transported all the way back to 1885, 100 years in the past compared to present day, where Marty then needs to travel to in the third film in order to get them both back to the present day. All in all, I really enjoyed this film trilogy. It's quite a lot of fun to watch, and I still think it holds up to this day. I can definitely recommend the Back to the Future trilogy as a set of good general audience films that a lot of people would probably still enjoy today even if they've never seen them before. They are probably going to be timeless even if the film was originally meant to take place at the present time that the film was released. All in all, definitely recommend checking these movies out, and who knows, they may end up becoming some of your favorite films. But with a little bit of background out of the way, why don't we just get into the main character that's featured in the level pack for Back to the Future. Here comes Marty McFly as the first playable character from Back to the Future, played by Michael J. Fox in both the original film trilogy and returning here in LEGO Dimensions to reprise his role for the first time in over 25 years. Now that's a really big deal, especially to Back to the Future fans, when you consider that there had hardly been any other media in relation to the franchise since the third film came out. Honestly, while I didn't get into Back to the Future until recently, that's honestly incredible. In LEGO Dimensions, however, well, unfortunately, despite it being really awesome that Michael J. Fox reprised his role here, Marty is one of the worst characters in the entire game because he only has one ability to his entire name, the Sonar Smash, or the ability to break glass with sound, an ability that I already touched upon while discussing Benny from the LEGO movie that is also possessed by several other mandatory characters throughout the game. I guess in one sense this makes him unique, however, because from one perspective, he's the only character in the entire game to only possess one ability. The only one. The real appeal to Marty McFly's character pack, however, is his vehicles. What with the DeLorean providing the ability to travel through time as an ability exclusive only to it and one other device, and the hoverboard which can be used to cross large gaps if a flying character is unavailable. Yeah, the latter of these doesn't really serve too much of a purpose in the game, but it's a really cool detail and definitely an important prop from the film, so I can't really blame them for including it. It's also a really cool detail that it was actually programmed to not move above water, just how it did in the second movie. Nice attention to detail there. If it weren't for the DeLorean and the associated level that comes with Marty McFly, I absolutely could not recommend Marty as a character in LEGO Dimensions, but due to those aforementioned reasons, he is absolutely necessary for 100% completion, so make sure you pick him up if you're aiming for that completion status. He also comes with an electric guitar as his character accessory, which is fitting, knowing him. Dr. Emmett L. Brown, or Doc Brown for short, is a bit of a lunatic scientist that managed to make time travel possible in the first film, although throughout the saga, he eventually began to discover the repercussions and benefits of creating such an innovation. Played by Christopher Lloyd in the films, Doc is remembered for his wacky antics and lovable personality, so it would only make sense that he be given a special character promotion for being in LEGO Dimensions.
Variants. Commanding. Where did you come from?
And that's right. Christopher Lloyd returns as Doc Brown once again, just as Michael J. Fox did for Marty, meaning that Dimensions got both of the two main characters back together for a reunion in this game. Again, after over 2.5 decades. That's just awesome. Doc Brown in the game has a few more abilities than Marty, including the technology and hacking abilities, which are different from each other for some reason, I'll never get over that, as well as the fix-it ability that the other character named Emmett also had. Coincidence? I think not. Two characters named Emmett that are good at fixing things and voiced by a person named Chris. What are the odds? Doc also has access to a new ability that I haven't talked about yet that allows him to summon a mini remote-controlled DeLorean to navigate these tubes and activate buttons, as well as an intelligence ability, which is different from the technology ability, which is different from the hacking ability, even though all three allow a character to access a panel and do something computer-related. I don't get it. It's super redundant. I mean, at least hacking has the separate minigame associated with it, whereas technology and intelligence exist in a variety of different puzzles and basically do the same thing. But hey, he comes with the remote control accessory and the time-traveling train as his vehicle, a reference to the train from the third film, and is also that other vehicle I mentioned with time travel capabilities. All in all, I think Doc Brown is a pretty decent character. He's certainly more versatile than Marty, that's for sure. If you need a character on standby with the ability to access a bunch of different panel types, well, he's a pretty good choice for that and that alone. I mean, having all three available and the RC car on top of that, pretty useful. I wouldn't really use him when it comes to mobility, however. He's not very good for getting around. Back to the Future inside the story mode of the game takes place at the 6th level of the main campaign following the DC Comics level. In this stage, the main trio of heroes gets sent back in time to Hill Valley in 1885, the setting of the third film, and 100 years prior to the present year of when the film series is set to take place. After navigating the initial area, Lord Vortek comes in and steals the show, creating this long hallway of obstacles that the player needs to navigate around before entering a boss battle with him. The actual stage itself gets kind of overshadowed by Vortek in this level, honestly, so there's not a ton of Back to the Future representation here, but that's where the add-on content comes in. The mini-kits for Back to the Future are none other than little mini Mr. Fusion devices as seen in the films, and collecting all 10 in the story mode level will result in building the giant speaker system that Marty is seen hooking his guitar up to at the beginning of the first film. I should also note that Clara Clayton from Back to the Future Part 3 is the citizen in peril for this stage and is located in the first area while strapped to a horse. All it takes is a character that can water plants to save her and she's taken care of. Easy peasy. The coolest part part about this level, however, is that the time travel station that can be built later in the level, which takes the player all the way to the year 2015, complete with flying vehicles and 3D movie holograms. It's a pretty accurate representation of Hill Valley. In fact, I'd say the reconstruction is remarkably accurate to the square seen in the film, complete with the gas station and the movie theater and the clock tower in the back. This was really cool to see, and it makes me appreciate the attention to detail that the team putting into making this, because it really enhances the experience as a player who's seen the films. I've enjoyed DC Comics, Lord of the Rings, and the Lego Movie to a pretty good degree, but this just feels like the next step forwards. I can really tell that fans of Back to the Future made this portion of the game. Otherwise though, that's most of the important things of note in regards to the story mode stage, so for the first time, let's move on to the character exclusive level.
Yeah, I think running away was the right idea.
That wasn't running away. That was a tactical retreat.
Remind me, what's the difference?
Batman doesn't run away.
That's not a difference.
Hey, Doc. Doc? Hello, anybody home? Einstein? Here, boy. Whoa! Ow! Doc, this is disgusting. Seriously, where are you? Oh, well, I guess I can kick back for a while. Or maybe I can finish off that amplifier the Doc's been working on.
So I believe I said this in my introductory video, but as a brief refresher, certain characters that were released for LEGO Dimensions came in packs known as level packs, which not only included their character minifigure and a vehicle, but also a gadget along with that, and a playable level that can only be unlocked through their pack specifically in the game. This inherently means that yes, every single level pack that was released for LEGO Dimensions is required for 100%. Even though Marty as a playable character is not very good, he is needed for completion, again, to reiterate that point. Now, the Back to the Future level that comes along with the Marty McFly level pack, literally just named Back to the Future, recounts some significant moments from the original movie, minus a lot of the fluff that took place in the middle. The level begins as the film does, with Marty stumbling into Doc Brown's residence and hooking his guitar up to the stereo system before blasting himself into a bookshelf. From there, he gets a call from the Doc who tells him to meet him at the Twin Pines Mall at 1:15 a.m., where he proceeds to unveil the time-traveling DeLorean and explain its capabilities. Unfortunately, that doesn't last long because pretty soon the Libyans show up to seek revenge on him for ripping them off of their plutonium, and Marty has to make a daring escape into the DeLorean back through time to 1955. Unfortunately, he finds himself stranded there after crashing into a barn, so he goes to meet past Doc Brown to help him get back to the future. From there, the two plan things out and we skip past all the parts where Marty has to make sure his parents get back together so he doesn't get erased from existence, although the dance still appears in the stage as the hidden secret area of the level where you can actually rescue Lorraine, the citizen of peril for the level. Also, since I may as well point it out, the minikits of this level are the same as the story mode stage, although these 10 minikits actually recreate a different device, none other than Biff Tannen's car, which will be accessed later in the adventure world. The final segment of the stage consists of Marty needing to plug in these 3 plugs scattered around the street so that he can connect all of the wires and charge up the DeLorean panel that will allow him to travel back to the future. Doc Brown is of course up on top of the clock tower while this is going down, ensuring that Marty will be able to make it back safe without missing the lightning strike at exactly 10:04 p.m. With luck, Marty succeeds and gets whisked back to his own time where he finds out the Doc wasn't killed by the Libyans after all, and the level ends there with a prominent fade out. Man, what a great film franchise. It's just a trilogy of fun Hollywood films, and yeah, sure, you could pick apart the time travel aspects and argue over why it does or doesn't make sense, but honestly, who cares about the semantics of time travel? I just enjoy a good story with good characters, and Back to the Future has that. I've never really had a problem with time travel plots because honestly, until we can actually time travel ourselves, we don't actually know how it works. There's plenty of scientific theories out there, sure, but until we have definitive scientific evidence that proves how it works, I'm not gonna sweat it. I enjoy fun. Sue me. I love this stage and all the callbacks it had to the first film, and while I wish there was a better middle area instead of the barn that Marty crashes into of all things, there's not much else I really feel the need to talk negatively about. I enjoyed it quite a lot, and if this is the closest thing we're ever going to get to an actual Back to the Future video game, hey, I'll take it. But I suppose we can go ahead and move on to the Adventure World now, so let's get this show on the roads.
Oh, will you look at this? It's unbelievable!
Did I say roads? I'm sorry, where we're going, we don't need roads. And so, here we have Hill Valley, one of the most unique adventure worlds in the entire game, bar none. Reason being that unlike any other world in the game, this is the only one that has 3 different forms taking place in different time periods that the player can travel in between. Aye, this is where the DeLorean and time-traveling train comes into play, as the way to travel between these worlds is to drive said vehicle onto these specific platforms so that they can reach up to a top speed of 88 miles per hour and instantly transport directly through time itself. Thus, this adventure world has all of its objectives and collectibles scattered about the 3 different eras of Hill Valley, those of course being the default 1985, the future of 2015, and the past of 1885, settings primarily featured in each of the 3 movies in that specific order, although of course the 1955 Hill Valley is missing here even though it was supposed to be featured in the game, but that's sort of made up for with the story level that features both the high school dance as well as the main strip that Marty drives down to get home. Regardless, it's a pretty refreshing world to travel around because a lot of the puzzles and gimmicks present here need to be solved by performing different actions in each of the 3 eras to influence the Hill Valley of a different time period. For instance, there's this plant that you can water in the past that will then have grown into the present era for you to obtain a gold brick. It's really cool and it asks a bit more from the player in that sense, which makes it stand out from the other 3 worlds I've already talked about. Of the 3 different time periods, I think that the 2015 Hill Valley is my favorite, seeing as it is pretty vibrant with life and fun, and the flying cars and 3D shark are all great, but all 3 have their perks, so I could see any one of the 3 being a particular person's favorite. I also love how the devs actually got the rights to the first film's main theme song, Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News, which plays every so often in the background of the present-day adventure world. It's such a great song that still holds up, and even though it's before my time, still love it nonetheless. There are plenty of references here that fans of the films will instantly be able to recognize, such as the 80s cafe located on one corner that Marty visits in the future of the second film, or the saloon that's in 1885 Hill Valley, which is where Marty had his run-in with Mad Dog Tannen. There's some real sights to behold here, and it comes across as a genuine love letter to Back to the Future fans. Now, as for the collectibles, the red brick of this adventure world actually nets the player another one of those cosmetic effects similar to the DC Comics red brick, where all drivable vehicles will have the Back to the Future effects when driving them around. In essence, creating this aura of lightning, as I describe it, around the outside of them that looks pretty cool but isn't exceptional in any real way, I find. This adventure world also possesses 4 different races scattered across all 3 time periods, although interestingly enough, none of them take place underwater because this is actually the first adventure world we've encountered where there isn't any diving underwater section anywhere to be found. It does have this strange winding highway that goes around the perimeter of the world, ducking under the canyon and floating up in the sky, which is also a railroad in the past, but oddly enough, there aren't any gold bricks to collect on it, nor does it have any sort of racing course, which A, is super disappointing, and B, makes me question why it's even there in the first place. I kinda wish it had more of a purpose to the world, because as any other player would probably notice, 95% of all of this world's objectives and collectibles are found in the Hill Valley Square itself, just one fraction of the entire adventure world. there's this giant mountain range and all this vast space that hardly hosts any gold bricks at all aside from this one puzzle that requires you to activate 3 different chroma panels across all 3 time periods and then erase here and there. It feels like it's just empty space to make the level feel bigger, but it doesn't serve any actual gameplay purpose. One missed opportunity that I really find to be unfortunate is that they could have recreated that entire car chase sequence with Biff and Marty on this highway as some sort of boss fight, you know, that ending climax of the second film. The tunnel would just need to be extended for the final square off between Marty and Biff themselves, but besides that, this could have easily been one of the biggest highlights of the entire adventure world. It's especially strange because despite his ancestor and offspring both making appearances in their respective time periods, Biff Tannen himself does not appear anywhere at all in the entire game, despite being one of the most prominent characters in the films. Maybe he was planned for the 1955 era that was scrapped, but not even his 1985 car waxing self appears anywhere, just his car, which is the minikit exclusive of the Back to the Future level. That minikit is a basic timing minigame where you have to press the button that appears on screen fast enough to dodge the manure. You get 3 tries until you fail, but I found the timing pretty fair, so I don't have any complaints here. It's also a nice reference to how Biff gets his car driven into manure in both the first and second films. Again, small attention to details that just give it that extra magic touch. The other minikit device gold brick is through the speaker system from the actual story mode level, which functions exactly the same as Unikitty's DDR machine. Just time the button presses accordingly and you'll earn that brick in no time, no difficulty whatsoever. Renovation-wise, well, let's just say there's a total of 10 in this adventure world, but really there are only 8 because 3 of the renovations are just the jukebox in each respective time period. One in the past, one in the present, one in the future. Yeah, you get the idea. The other 7, though, are split 2, 2, and 3 for the overall adventure world. The past consists of a renovation for the initial building of the clock tower, a prominent motif from all 3 films that got its start when it was seen being wound in Back to the Future Part 3, and this renovation later unlocks a gold brick in the present day where the clock tower can actually be fixed.
Where I'm going, I don't need roads.
Until the renovation is purchased, though, the clock face doesn't appear at all, which is another one of those examples of affecting something in one time period to create a new outcome in another. There's also this Hill Valley sign that can be repaired, nothing too special there. And thirdly, the railroad station, which brings in a full-on train once that one gets built back to normal. Present day, Hill Valley has the dig site, which is tied to that chroma keystone puzzle I briefly mentioned a few moments ago, about how you need to travel between all 3 time periods to activate a panel in each, as well as this present day Hill Valley sign, which can be fixed up as well. Future Hill Valley, on the other hand, has the cinema, which can be repaired to restore the 3D hologram of the shark that attempts to eat Marty in the second film while he looks like a fool in public. I won't lie, one of the biggest disappointments having lived in 2015 was that this form of advertisement was not really a reality yet. Although come to think of it, I think the most disappointing reality is that the Cubs were this close to winning the World Series and they ended up not winning it until the following year. I mean, how crazy would it have been if this film predicted that? Getting back to this film advertisement, I also love how there's an indirect reference to Jaws 19, seeing as Back to the Future Part 2 was originally referencing Jaws in its own movie advertisement. A clever way to tie in a modern reference to a classic one, like it really works. Oh, and of course, Future Hill Valley also is a sign that needs renovated as well, topping off the last renovations on the list. Some of them seem a bit redundant. I mean, I don't see why the jukebox had to be bought 3 times instead of just once and then unlocked in all 3 time periods, and the signs aren't very exciting renovations, but hey, the rest are pretty cool. Even still, the main character quests have a bit more to offer than what we've covered so far, so why dilly-dally any longer when we can get into Hill Valley? Now, it should be noted that 2 of the quests are located in 1885 while 3 of them are in 2015, so no character quests whatsoever can be found in regular old 1985.
You ought to watch yourself, Fred. You've heard Mad Dog Tannen has been causing trouble something fierce of late.
The first of the 1885 quests is given to you by Marty McFly, Marty's ancestor, who informs the player about Mad Dog Tannen, who's been causing chaos around town lately and needs to be stopped. This is the typical fight a bunch of enemies mission we've seen by this point, although it does end with an actual boss fight with Tannen, so at least it has that going for it. The depth of this challenge doesn't go far beyond that, however.
Good timing. I promised Clara I'd fix her telescope, but of course, the moment I go to my telescope parts drawer, empty. It appears telescope repair is a more popular trade of the 1880s than the history books give it credit for.
The other mission in the past is given to you by the 1885 Doc Brown. Well, technically the 1985 Doc Brown that then goes to 2015, that then goes back to 1955, that then goes to 1885. He needs a few pieces of material in order to fix Clara Clayton's telescope. This is actually a task that Clara had given him in the original film, so that was a pretty good callback in the form of a character mission that I can commend greatly. It's a very small moment in the overall grand scope of the third movie, but it's still really cool that they referenced something like that and managed to come up with an entire mission based around it. The items aren't too hard to find though, so it shouldn't give you much trouble at all. In 2015, on the other hand, there exists the remaining 3 quests, 2 of which are provided by Marty McFly's children, Marlene McFly and Marty Jr.
Grandma Lorraine sent me out to do some shopping, but I promised my boyfriend that we'd hang out today, so yeah, I think I know which one of them I'm gonna choose.
Marlene's quest is another collectathon similar to Doc Brown's in the sense that she needs the player to run errands for her while she goes off to hang out with her boyfriend. Although for one reason or another the player will finish it before she even has time with him, so she could have just done them herself the whole time, but hey, you get a gold brick out of it, so I guess it's worth it. Marty's quest, on the other hand, has a bit more to it.
Chris been trying to get me to join in on one of his crazy ideas, but I told him. I said, I need to talk to my dad about that. And he went even crazier and set his bionically enhanced goons on me. Man, I just want to get out of town in one piece.
Yep, Marty Jr. needs the player to protect him from Griff Tannen's thugs. That's Biff's son, for the record. And so the player escorts Marty Jr. around Hill Valley Square, beating up some gangsters along the way. And finally, the last quest present here is provided by 2015 Doc Brown that's already been to the future, who needs the player to go run down under the landscape to find his dog Einstein that's been digging around out on his own.
It appears Einstein isn't particularly fond of the dog food found in 2015. Every time I go to feed him lately, he runs off.
It's probably the most unique mission out of all of them, honestly, seeing as you end up traveling to an area that you'd most likely avoid otherwise, and you get to run up this cool pathway to the top where the dog gets stuck for 5 minutes, and you have to try and force it out of the excursion funnel so that he will run over to the dock. Yeah, that part was a little finicky, but overall, it's still fun, and I like how the portal assets are integrated into the future Back to the Future environment here. It makes total sense. With that marking the end of the 5th and final quest, the only major problem that I still want to discuss before ending this video off is the way that icons appear on the map in the bottom left corner. See, in other adventure worlds, the icons consist of whatever objective is present at that current spot on the radar and is super helpful in navigating the area to find the remaining objectives that have yet to be found. This includes renovations, quest lines, gold bricks, you get the picture. However, because the Back to the Future adventure world consists of 3 different time periods that can only be accessed one at a time, any objective that cannot be accessed in the current time period is indicated by one of 2 icons, a blue arrow or an orange arrow. Blue arrows indicate something that can only be accessed in the past, while orange arrows indicate it is in the future. At first, this seems like a great idea to indicate what time period something is located in if a player gets stuck. The catch is that once you travel through time, there is no way to differentiate whether or not you already collected said thing because it reappears on the map. Typically, once an objective is collected, it is removed from the map until the player leaves the adventure world, but this time that doesn't hold true because you're constantly loading in different variations of the same world. So in the event that you find yourself at 26 gold bricks and are trying to find the final 2 or whatever, good luck trying to figure out which ones they are when the map never clears itself out. I only had a tiny bit of trouble towards the end figuring out where the last few gold bricks were, so I wasn't distracted for too long personally, but I could totally see some more inexperienced players getting lost trying to figure out which ones they had already collected and which ones they hadn't, so I thought it was worth bringing up. I wouldn't blame someone for having a guide next to them to keep track of everything in this specific adventure world. It's the only glaring flaw that I could really see impeding someone's enjoyment, so for what it's worth, I did want to provide that criticism. I don't think it's a total deal breaker, but it does make tracking everything a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. Otherwise though, I was absolutely blown away by the representation that Back to the Future got in this game. Even if Doc Brown and Marty McFly aren't the most amazing characters to play as, the extra level and adventure world certainly do more than enough to make up for that. I love the references galore and am beyond impressed with how well this portion of the game came together. If I were to ever vouch for Dimensions, this would easily be a go-to franchise to show off how well represented it is. This honestly just makes me more and more excited for the next properties that I get to see here. Now, I debated back and forth about where I wanted to go from here, as far as the order that I cover the content of this game goes. I could have just gone in the rotation that the adventure worlds are featured in the main Vorton map screen. I could have gone from starter pack to level packs to team packs to fun packs, but instead I've decided I'm just gonna go in my own personally chosen order instead. That way I can kind of bounce back and forth between the bigger level packs and the smaller fun and team packs in order to switch things up a bit from those previous two methods I mentioned. As such, next up we are going to be visiting the Legends of Chima adventure world in order to switch things up. So far I've been pretty familiar with all of the covered franchises, so now it's time for me to dive into something entirely new. I know next to nothing about Legends of Chima, so this should be an interesting experience? Maybe? I honestly have no idea what to expect. Either way, I hope you're looking forward to it, and until next time, Shadowstreak signing off.
Woohoo! Last one to the end is a rotten skull!